Good morning, everyone. We are the Group 3 and we will be tackling the conic section ellipse.
So what is an ellipse? An ellipse is the set of all points P, the sum of whose distance from two specified points f sub 1 and f sub 2 is a constant number. The point f sub 1 and f sub 2 are called foci or focus.
Note that in ellipse, there are two axes of symmetry, the major axis, which is the longer axis, and the minor axis, which is the shorter axis. The vertex or the vertices of an ellipse is the endpoint of the major axis, while the co-vertex or the co-vertices is the endpoint of the minor axis of an ellipse. The center of an ellipse is the midpoint of both the major and the minor axes. The axes of an ellipse are perpendicular at the center, and its foci always lie on the major axis. And the sum of the distances from the foci to any point on the ellipse, or the constant sum, is greater than the distance between the foci.
So the graph you see in your screen, that is the graph of ellipse or elliptical shape. In ellipse, you will also encounter the major axis or the longest diameter. So, from the vertex to another vertex of our ellipse, that is the major axis. We also have the minor axis or the shortest diameter. From the co-vertex to another co-vertex, that is the minor axis. We have the semi-major axis. Semi-major axis, that is the half of the measure of the major axis. So, from the vertex to center point, mauna ang semi-major axis. So that means the measure of that is A. And also, we have the semi-minor axis, half the measure of our minor axis. So, from the co-vertex to the center point, that is the semi-minor axis or B. Ang C kay C is the distance of the center going to the foci or focus. So, those are the terms, mathematical terms that you are going to encounter in ellipse. There are two forms of standard equation of an ellipse centered at 0, 0, depending on whether the major axis is horizontal or vertical. Standard form of equation of an ellipse centered at 0, 0. The major axes are horizontal and vertical. The equation for the horizontal is x squared over a squared plus y squared over b squared is equal to 1. And for the vertical, x squared minus b squared plus y squared over a squared is equal to 1. For the foci or focus, negative c and 0 and c 0 for the horizontal. For the vertical, 0, negative c, and 0, c. The relationship of ABC is c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared, both horizontal and vertical. Mosa na siya ang formula sa C. Length of the major axis, 2a, both horizontal and vertical. Length of the major axis, 2b, both horizontal and vertical. The vertices of horizontal are negative a, 0, and a, 0. For the vertical, 0, negative a, and 0, a. For the co-vertex of horizontal, 0, negative b, and 0, b. For the vertical, negative b, 0, and b, 0. You can write the equation of an ellipse when you are given the coordinates of the vertex and foci.
In order for us to visualize our formula, we need to have some examples. Write the equation of the ellipse shown in the graph. By the way, let's not forget that our A is classified as our major axis, B is classified as our minor axis, and our C is classified as our foci. An ellipse has two axes of symmetry, the longer one called the major axis and the shorter one called the minor axis. In our graph, we can already identify which among the two lines is our major axis, which is our horizontal line, since it lies along with our x-axis. And of course, it has the longer distance, so automatically it will be our major axis. Our ellipse here has a horizontal major axis. And first thing we need to do is to find the length of our major axis. In the graph, the coordinates of the vertices that lie in the major axis are -7 and 0 and 7, 0. So the length of our overall major axis is equal to 14. So the equation would be like this. 2a is equal to 14. In order to get a, let's divide both sides by 2 and our a would be 7. From our graph, the indicated foci is -6 to 0 and 6 to 0. So automatically our C or our foci would be 6. Now that we already find those two values from our A and C, let's continue on finding our B through using this equation. C squared is equal to A squared minus B squared. Let's substitute C by 6 and A by 7. 6 squared is equal to 36 and 7 squared is equal to 49. Let's subtract 49 from both sides of the equation, and our b squared would be -13. Since we need to eliminate negative sign from our b squared, let's multiply both sides by -1. So our b squared now would be equal to 13. We can now use standard equation of ellipse with a horizontal major axis. X squared all over a squared plus y squared all over b squared is equal to 1. Now everything is ready. Let's do the substitution. Let's substitute a by 7 and b squared by 13. Since we haven't simplified our a, let's square 7. So this is our simplified standard equation of ellipse with a horizontal major axis. X squared all over 49 plus y squared all over 13 is equal to 1. Here's another example. If the length of a horizontal axis of an ellipse is equal to 20 and the length of the vertical axis is equal to 16, write the equation of the ellipse centered at the region in standard form and graph the ellipse. Let's have the solution. In the problem, it's stated there that the horizontal axis or the distance of the horizontal axis is equal to 20 and for our vertical axis is equal to 16. Since our horizontal axis is longer, it will be our major axis. Did you still remember from the previous discussion that our major axis is equate as 2a and our minor axis is equate as 2b? Now let's have our equation. 2a equals 20. To find a, let's divide both sides by 2. So our a is 10. And for our 2b, which is our minor axis, our equation would be 2b equals 16. In order to get our b or define our b, let's divide both sides by 2 and our answer would be 8. Let's find c. With the equation c squared equals a squared minus b squared. This equation derived from Pythagorean theorem, as you remember. Let's proceed. So c squared, substitute 10 by a and 8 by b. So c squared equals 10 to the power of 2 is equal to 100. 8 to the power of 2 is equal to 64. 100 minus 64 is equal to 36. In order to find c, let's square 36. So the answer would be 6. So now, we already have the value of a, b, and c. Let's proceed to our standard equation with a horizontal major axis. So, let's do the substitution. Substitute our a by 10 and our b by 8. 10 squared is equal to 100. 8 squared is equal to 64. So this is our standard equation of ellipse with a horizontal major axis, which is x squared all over 100 plus y squared all over 64 is equal to 1. Now that we are done with our solution, let's proceed on graphing our ellipse. Our vertices or our major axis is equal to 20. So there, our A is equal to 10 because as our previous discussion, A is considered our major axis. Or it's always been our A that has the longer value will be considered as our major axis. So our vertices or major axis here is 10. Our minor axis or our B would be 8 since we already have the value of B. So let's just put it on our graph. We also have the value of C which is 6. So let's put it inside of our vertices, and now we're already done with our graphing. Para di mo malibog, muraragi tunga ang major axis into two sides. So, ang gihatag man dito sa problem kay 20, so sa both sides tag 10 jud sila. Ang katusad nga minor axis kani nga vertical nga line, we can see nga 16 sad tong gihatag sa problem. So, when given a point nga itunga sila, so tag 8 jud sila by sides. But let's not forget on how we will write foci from the distance from our center to foci. So it will be like this. Negative 6 to 0 and 6 to 0. For our vertices or major axis, negative 10 to 0 and 10 to 0. And last, for our minor axis or co-vertices, it would be 0 to negative 8 and 0 to positive 8. Next example. Write the equation 7x squared plus 3y squared is equal to 63 in standard form and sketch a graph of the ellipse. From the equation 7x squared plus 3y squared is equal to 63, in order for this equation to transform into standard form, let's divide both sides by 63. 7x squared divided by 63 would be x squared all over 9 plus 3y squared divided by 63 would be y squared all over 21. 63 divided by itself would be equal to 1. So, we already have the simplified standard form, which is x squared all over 9 plus y squared all over 21 is equal to 1. Now that we are done with our solution, let's find the value of A, B, and C. So in our A squared, since the major axis or our longer value here is 21, let's use 21 as our A. So in order to find A, let's square 21. So the answer would be 4.58. So let's proceed to B. Since our minor axis or shorter value in the equation is 9, we will use 9 as our B. So, in order for us to find B, let's square 9 first. So, the answer would be 3. So, our B is equal to 3. Let's proceed on finding our C through using this equation. C squared is equal to A squared minus B squared.
So let's substitute A squared by 21 and B squared by 9. Dili A ha, dili po ang B. A squared ang B squared.
So in order to get our, or to find our C, let's square 12. The answer would be 3.46. Now that we already find those three values, let's proceed on to graphing. So on our graph, we already know that our major axis located on our y-axis. The vertical axis would be considered our major axis,
since it has the longer axis.
from our previous solution, the value of A, which is our major axis, is equal to 4.58. And for our B, or our minor axis that lies on our x-axis, is equal to 3. While our C, or our foci that lies inside, is equal to 3.46. So this is how you would write foci, which is 0 from the center to our foci, which is negative 3.46, and 0 to 3.46. For our vertices, from our center 0 to negative 4.58 and 0 to positive 4.58. And last, for our co-vertices, which is negative 3 to 0 and 3 to positive 0.
So, we are done discussing the ellipse whose center is at the origin. So now, we will discuss the ellipse whose center is located at a particular point each k. For ellipse with center at each k with major axis parallel to the x-axis, these following characters will be derived. So the equation of the ellipse will be quantity x minus h squared over a squared plus the quantity y minus k squared over b squared equals 1, which is a is greater than b. Next, the foci will be h minus c, comma k, and h plus c, comma k. The ABC will be c squared equals a squared minus b squared. The length of the major axis will be 2a, and for the minor axis is 2b. The vertices will be h minus a, comma k, and h plus a, comma k. And lastly, for its co-vertices, we have h, comma k minus b, and h, comma k plus b. So, to understand more, let us have an example. So, example, write the equation 2x squared plus 8y squared minus 20x plus 48y equals negative 106 in standard form and sketch a graph of the ellipse. So, if the equation of an ellipse is not in standard form, we have to complete the square in order to transform the equation. So, ang equation nga gihatag sa tuwa kay 2x squared plus 8y squared minus 20x plus 48y equals negative 106. This equation is an example of an equation of ellipse in general form. And so, to transform this to standard form, first we have to regroup the x variables and y variables together. So, kung i-regroup na to ang x variables and y variables, makaporma taog 2x squared minus 20x plus quantity 8y squared plus 48y equals negative 106. Next, i-factor na to ang duha ka equation inside the parenthesis, which is the 2x squared minus 20x ug ang 8y squared plus 48y. So, ang mahitabuan na, ang quantity 2x squared minus 20x kay mahimong 2 quantity x squared minus 10x, tas ang 8y squared plus 48y kay mahimong 8 quantity y squared plus 6y. So, nakapurma na taog 2 quantity x squared minus 10x plus 8 quantity y squared plus 6y equals negative 106. So, now, we are ready to complete the square. So, karon, we need to divide the coefficients of both x and y of the middle terms, which is kining negative 10 and positive 6. I-divide na to siya 2 dayon square para makapurma taog perfect square trinomial. So, negative 10 divided by 2 equals 5. Then squared equals 25. Then 6 divided by 2 equals 3. Tas kung squared kay 9. So, kapurma na taog 2 quantity x squared minus 10x plus 25 plus 8 quantity y squared plus 6y plus 9 equals negative 106. Ug karon, kung unsa gani tong atong napuno sa left side, kay mupud ang atong i-add sa right side. Pero sa inyong nakita, nganong na 50 og 72 man ang na-add. So, yung ani ni siya. Kay 25 man ang gi-add nato, so gi-multiply siya sa 2. Kanang nasa left side, so 25 times 2 equals 50. Same situation pod sa 9 og 8. So, ginimultiply mo ang 72. So, mo negative 106 plus 50 plus 72 equals 16. So, nanatay 2 quantity x squared minus 10x plus 25 plus 8 quantity y squared plus 6y plus 9 equals 16. Then, we have to factor the perfect square trinomial, which is kining naa sa sulod sa parenthesis, and write it as a binomial squared. So, mahitabuan ang x squared minus 10x plus 25 kay mahimong quantity x minus 5 squared, og ang y squared plus 6y plus 9 kay mahimong y plus 3 squared. So, makapurma na taog 2 quantity x minus 5 squared plus 8 quantity y plus 3 squared equals 16. And lastly, we have to divide the equation by 16 to get the right side of the equation equal to 1. Then, charan, we have quantity x minus 5 squared over 8 plus quantity y plus 3 squared over 2 equals 1. Muna na siya standard form. Since the denominator of x squared is larger, the ellipse has a horizontal major axis. And now, so that it is easier for us to plot the graph, let's find the center, foci, vertices, and co-vertices of the equation. But first, let's identify sa kung saan nila ang a squared, ang b squared, a, kung unsa ang a, b, and c para dali na lang. So, since kay gingon man nga a is greater than b, maklaro na nato sa atong equation nga a squared is equal to 8 and b squared is equal to 2. Next, let's find the value of a. So, to get the value of a, we're going to find the square root of 8. So, the square root of 8 is equal to 2.83. Then, let's find the value of b. So, to find the value of b, we're going to get the square root of 2, which is 1.41. So now we have a is equal to 2.83 and b is equal to 1.41. So now, let's solve for c. So we are going to use the formula c squared equals a squared minus b squared. So c squared is equal to 8 minus 2. C squared is equal to 6. So we're going to get the square root of c squared and the square root of 6. So now we have c is equal to plus minus square root of 6 or 2.45. So the value of c is equal to 2.45. And now, let's find the center, foci, vertices, and co-vertices of the equation. So, looking at our equation, since we have quantity x minus 5 and quantity y plus 3, the center of the ellipse would be 5 and negative 3. So, next will be the foci. So, since kabalo na ta sa value sa c, ug based sa table kaniha, foci is h minus c comma k and h plus c comma k. So, since kabalo na ta kung unsa ang value sa h, sa c, or sa k, we're going to substitute h to 5, c to 2.45, and k to negative 3. So, natay 5 minus 2.45 comma negative 3, and 5 plus 2.45 comma negative 3. So, kung i-simplify nato, we have the foci of 2.55 negative 3 and 7.45 negative 3. Then, we have to find the vertices of major axis. Remember that a is equal to 2.83. Ug based sa table, the vertices of major axis is h minus a comma k and h plus a comma k. So, substitution ng gihapon. Then we have 5 minus 2.83 comma negative 3 and 5 plus 2.83 comma negative 3. So, kung i-simplify, we have the vertices of major axis 2.17 negative 3 and 7.83 negative 3. Lastly, we have to find the vertices of the minor axis or the co-vertices. Remember that B is equal to 1.41. So to find the co-vertices, we have H, K minus B and H, K plus B. So that would be 5, negative 3 minus 1.41 and 5, negative 3 plus 1.41. So, in simplify na to, we have the covertices of 5, negative 4.41 and 5, negative 1.59. And now, kay nakuha naman nato ang center, foci, vertices of covertices of the equation, ready na gid kayo ni siya nga i-graph. So, here. The center is 5 and negative 3. So, we have the center. That center. Next, we have the foci of 2.55 and negative 3. So, foci, 2.50. So, focus 1, we have 2.55 and negative 3. And focus 2, we have 7.45 of negative 3. So, here. Next, we have the vertices, 17, negative 3. So, V1, 2.17, negative 3, here. And 7.83, negative 3, here. And lastly, we have the co-vertices. So, katong sa minor axis. Kay vertices kay major. So, ang co-vertices minor. So, here, the co-vertices. First, we have kani 5 and negative 4.41. Then, ang ikaduha, 5 and negative 1.59. So, charan. Mauna ni siya ang graph sa ellipse, which is horizontal.
Since Miss Ria is done discussing the standard form of a horizontal major axis of an ellipse centered at h, k, so now let's proceed into an example of a vertical major axis of an ellipse centered at h, k. So here are somewhat the formulas or the basis in getting the standard form of a vertical major axis of an ellipse which is centered at h, k. So in getting the equation, we must use the quantity x minus h squared over b squared plus quantity of y minus k squared over a squared equals 1, in which a is always greater than b. And in foci, we will use the h, k minus c and h, plus c. And in getting the ABC, we will use the formula of c squared equals a squared minus b squared. And in getting the length of the major axis, we will use the 2a. And in the length of the minor axis, we will use the formula of 2b. And in getting the vertices, we will use the formula h, k minus a and h, k plus a. Co-vertices, we will use the h minus b, k and h plus b, k. Compared to the horizontal major axis, the vertical axis also have the same formulas or basis in getting the standard form, while we can notice that in vertical major axis, when we add or we subtract, it is always in y coordinates. While in the horizontal axis or major axis, we can see or we can notice that when we add or subtract, it is always in the side of the x coordinates, because the horizontal axis is the coordinates also of the y axis. This is what it looks like to graph a vertical major axis of an ellipse that is not centered in its origin. So, for example, write the equation of an ellipse in the standard form if the vertices of the ellipse are 2, 19 and 2, negative 7, and the co-vertices are negative 3, 6 and 7, 6. So, given in the left side the given vertices and the co-vertices, always as well as the unknown values that we need to find out. So, first, let's find out the center or the h, k. So to find h comma k, we will use the midpoint formula, which is m equals x1 plus x2 over 2, comma y1 plus y2 over 2. Based on the values of vertices in the left side, we will use it to substitute to the midpoint formula. So we come up with the m is equals to 2 plus 2 over 2, comma 19 plus minus negative 7 over 2. And then let's simplify. So we came up with m is equivalent to 2 comma 6. So therefore, our centered h comma k is equivalent to 2 comma 6, wherein our h is equivalent to 2 and our k is equivalent to 6. Since we already have the value of center, let's proceed in finding the value of A and B, or the length of the major and the minor axis. So to get the value of A, first we will use the y-coordinates of the vertices to solve the major axis. So 19 minus negative 7 is equal to 26. Then using the formula of 2a equals 226, we simplify it using the division property of equality by dividing both sides by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is cancelled out, a is bring down, and 26 divided by 2 is equivalent to 13. So our a now is equivalent to 13. And to find the length of the horizontal axis, we will subtract the x coordinates from the co-vertices. So 7 minus negative 3 is equivalent to 10. So, and then 2b is equivalent to 10, and using the division property of equality, we divide both sides by 2, and divided by 2 is cancelled out, and b is bring down, and 10 divided by 2 is equivalent to 5. So our b now is equivalent to 5. So our a is equivalent to 13 and b is equivalent to 5. So now, since we already have the value of a and b, let's proceed in getting the value of c. So using the c squared equals a squared minus b squared formula, we will get the c by substituting the value of a and b. So c squared is equivalent to 13 squared minus 5 squared. And let's simplify. C squared is equivalent to 169 minus 25, and 169 minus 25 is equivalent to 114. And in order to get the c, we need to square root the 114. And the square root of 114 is equivalent to 12. So therefore, our c now is equivalent to 12. So now let's proceed in solving the two focus. The first focus is equivalent to h comma k minus c, and we just substitute the values using the values in the given and the known values in the left side. So we have 2 comma 6 minus 12, and we simplify it and we get the focus is equivalent to 2 comma negative 6, and the focus 2 is equivalent to h comma k plus c, and we also substitute the values given in the left side. So we get the focus is equivalent to 2 comma and 18. Since we already know the unknown values, we will now proceed in solving the standard equation of ellipse with vertical major axis using the quantity of x minus h squared over b squared plus quantity of y minus k squared over e squared equals 1. And then let's substitute these values that given in the blue table at the left side to this equation. So now after substituting, now we get the quantity of x minus 2 squared over 5 squared plus the quantity of y minus 6 squared over 13 squared equals 1. And now we simplify it to get the standard equation. And then we get the quantity of x minus 2 squared over 25 plus quantity of y minus 6 squared over 169 equals 1. And that's it. The quantity of x minus 2 squared over 25 plus the quantity of y minus 6 squared over 169 equals 1 is the standard form or the standard equation of an ellipse with vertical major axis that is not centered in its origin. And since we already know the known values that needed in this graph also, we can graph this equation now. And here in the left side, we can say the coordinates that needed in our graph, and alongside with the color of points that points out which of those points in the graph they are. So the blue one is the centered or the HK, and the black one are the foci, and the green one are the vertices, and the co-vertices are the violet ones. And that's it. And that's all, everyone. Thank you for listening. And that's the end of our discussion about ellipse. And thank you for listening, everyone. And bye-bye.